Hello, English learners. Welcome back to our English Learning Podcast. We're so glad you're joining us today. And trust me, this episode is going to be a game changer. If you've been struggling to sound fluent in English, even though you know the words and understand the grammar, you're not alone. But here's the thing. Fluency isn't about how much vocabulary you know or how perfectly you follow grammar rules. It's about knowing the hidden techniques that make fluent speakers sound natural and confident. What if I told you that you're just 10 small changes away from speaking English fluently, without memorizing a single new word? Sound impossible? Well, it's not. Most learners hit a wall not because they don't know enough English, but because they're missing the subtle techniques that fluent speakers use naturally. And today, we're going to reveal those secrets. Stick with us until the end, because secret number 10 is a game changer that even most fluent speakers don't know about. If you've ever felt like you're almost there but not quite fluent, this episode will finally unlock that last barrier.
That's right. And welcome to everyone listening. Whether you're commuting, working out, or just relaxing at home, we're so happy you're here with us. If you've ever felt like you know the words but conversations still feel awkward, this episode is for you. We're not going to overload you with boring grammar drills. Instead, we're going to give you practical, real-life strategies that you can start using today. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear roadmap to sounding more confident and natural in any conversation. So grab a notebook or just sit back and listen, because you're about to level up your English speaking skills.
Let me tell you a secret that most English learners don't realize. Native speakers don't actually pronounce every word clearly. In fact, if you try to say every word perfectly, you'll sound stiff and unnatural. Fluent speakers use something called connected speech. That's when words are linked together and sounds are reduced to make speech flow more naturally and quickly. That's why native speakers sound so fast. They're not pronouncing every word, they're blending them together. But here's the problem. If you've learned English in a classroom, you were probably taught to speak in full, clear sentences, right? That's why you sound robotic when you speak, even if your grammar is perfect. The key to sounding fluent is mastering connected speech, because once you know how to link your words together naturally, you'll sound more relaxed and confident.
Exactly. And once you understand connected speech, you'll realize that you've actually been overthinking pronunciation this whole time. Let me give you some real-life examples of how native speakers use connected speech every day. What are you doing? Becomes what you're doing. Did you eat yet? Becomes do you eat yet? I'm going to go. Becomes I'm going to go. See how smooth that sounds? Native speakers don't say going to, they say gonna. They don't say did you, they say due. And if you try to say every word slowly and clearly, you'll sound unnatural because that's not how real conversations work. That's why a lot of learners struggle to understand native speakers. They're listening for textbook English when real English sounds completely different.
That's exactly why listening to native speakers helps so much. Connected speech is natural, but you have to train your ear and your mouth to get used to it. Here's how you can practice this. First, start by listening to a TV show, podcast, or even a YouTube video where native speakers are having a casual conversation. Write down a few common phrases you hear, things like gonna, wanna, lemme, and do you. Then, repeat them out loud, but not slowly. Try to say them as fast and naturally as the speaker. For example, instead of saying, I'm going to the store, try saying, I'm gonna go to the store. Instead of saying, what do you want? Say, what do you want? It's going to feel weird at first, but once your mouth gets used to the rhythm of connected speech, it'll feel completely natural.
And let me add one more tip. Shadowing. Shadowing is one of the most powerful ways to master connected speech. It means listening to a native speaker and repeating exactly what they say immediately after, trying to match their tone, rhythm, and pronunciation. Don't focus on understanding every word. Focus on mimicking the sound. For example, listen to a scene from a TV show, something simple like Friends or The Office. When a character says, I'm going to grab a coffee, pause the video and repeat it exactly how they said it, including the connected sounds. I'm going to grab a coffee. Not, I am going to grab a coffee. If you do this for just 5 minutes a day, you'll start to develop a natural speaking flow without even realizing it.
That's such a powerful strategy. And here's why it works. Your brain is learning the natural rhythm and structure of English, not just the individual words. That's why you need to get comfortable with linking and reducing sounds, because that's how real English works. And don't worry about sounding lazy. This is how native speakers talk. You're not cutting corners. You're speaking the way English is naturally spoken. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, practice connected speech using shadowing. Find a video or podcast you like, and spend at least 5 minutes a day mimicking the speaker's connected speech patterns. At first, it'll feel strange, but after a few days, you'll notice that conversations start to flow more naturally.
And here's the best part. Once you master connected speech, your listening skills will improve too. Why? Because you'll stop expecting textbook English and start hearing real English the way it's actually spoken. So instead of wondering why you can't understand native speakers, you'll start picking up on the patterns. And when you start to respond with that same natural rhythm, conversations will feel easier and more relaxed.
That's why connected speech is a game changer. It makes you sound fluent and helps you understand fluent speakers. And the next secret is just as powerful, because once you master connected speech, you'll need to know how to stay calm and in control in high-pressure conversations. Don't go anywhere, because the next secret will show you exactly how to do that.
Fluency isn't just about what you say. It's about how you say it. That's the difference between sounding like a native speaker and sounding like someone reading from a textbook. Most learners focus so much on the right vocabulary and grammar that they completely overlook intonation and stress. But that's where the magic happens. Intonation is the rise and fall of your voice. It's what makes you sound expressive and natural. And stress is about which words you emphasize. It's how native speakers make certain parts of a sentence stand out. If you're speaking in a flat, monotone voice, even if your grammar is perfect, you'll sound robotic and unnatural. But once you master intonation and stress, your speech will sound alive and engaging.
Exactly. Let me show you how powerful this is. Imagine you're having a conversation and someone says, "Really?" If they say it with a rising tone, "Really?" they're surprised. If they say it with a flat tone, "Really?" they're bored or uninterested. And if they say it with a falling tone, "Really?" they're confirming something or expressing certainty. Same word, completely different meanings, all because of intonation. Let's take it further with stress. In English, the word you emphasize in a sentence changes the meaning. Listen to this. I didn't say you took it. Means someone else took it. I didn't say you took it. Means it wasn't said at all. I didn't say you took it. Means it's false. It never happened. This is why just knowing the words isn't enough. You have to know how to deliver them.
And that's exactly why some conversations feel off, even when you're saying the right thing. If your intonation is wrong, the person you're talking to might misinterpret your mood or meaning. For example, if someone asks, "Do you want to go out tonight?" and you respond, "I guess so," with a flat tone, it sounds like you don't really want to go. But if you say it with a rising tone, "I guess so," it sounds playful or uncertain. Tone creates emotional context. It's what makes conversations feel real instead of forced.
And here's the secret. Intonation and stress aren't random. There are patterns that native speakers follow naturally, and once you recognize them, you'll start hearing them everywhere. For example, when you're asking a yes or no question, your intonation should rise at the end. Are you coming to the party? But when you're making a statement, your tone should usually fall, I'm going to the party. If you say that sentence with a rising tone, it sounds like you're unsure or asking for confirmation. That's why so many learners sound uncertain when they speak. They're using question intonation for statements.
That's such a common mistake, but it's easy to fix. Here's a drill you can try. Take a simple sentence like, I don't know. Now say it 3 different ways. 1. Rising tone. I don't know. Uncertainty. 2. Flat tone. I don't know. Disinterest. 3. Falling tone. I don't know. Certainty or finality. Do you feel the difference? Now apply this to your own conversations. When you're answering a question confidently, use a falling tone. If you're unsure, use a rising tone. This helps the listener understand not just your words, but how you feel about what you're saying.
And let's talk about stress, because this is where most learners really struggle. In English, we stress the content words, like nouns, verbs, and adjectives, and we reduce the function words, like the, of, and to. For example, I'm going to the store. Going and store are stressed because they carry the meaning. He's thinking about it. Thinking is stressed because it's the main action. But if you say, I'm going to the store, with equal stress on every word, it sounds strange and unnatural. That's why you need to practice emphasizing the important words and letting the others drop in volume.
Let me give you a real-life example. Imagine you're trying to make a point in a meeting. If you say, I think this is a good idea, with the stress on think, you're expressing uncertainty, like you're not sure. But if you say, I think this is a good idea, with stress on good, you're showing confidence in the idea itself. Small changes like that have a massive impact on how your message is received.
That's why stress and intonation are so important. They tell the listener how you feel about what you're saying. If you sound unsure or flat, people will assume you're not confident, even if your English is perfect. That's why fluent speakers sound natural. They know how to use stress and tone to make their words land the right way.
And here's how you can start practicing today. Take a short phrase like, I don't know or that's interesting, and say it with different tones and stress patterns. Try it with a rising tone, a falling tone, and a flat tone. Then record yourself and listen back. Ask yourself, does this sound natural? How would a native speaker say it? Keep practicing until it starts to feel automatic.
And shadowing works really well here too. Find a clip of a native speaker, maybe from a movie or a podcast, and repeat exactly what they say. Match their tone, their rhythm, and their stress patterns. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. Just focus on the sound of the language. If you practice this for even 5 minutes a day, you'll start hearing improvements in your speaking almost immediately.
Exactly. Intonation and stress aren't just about sounding natural, they make you sound confident. When you know how to use your tone and stress correctly, you stop second-guessing yourself because you know you sound like a fluent speaker. And here's the best part. Once you master this, your conversations will feel effortless. You won't have to think about how you sound, you'll just speak naturally.
That's why this is such a game changer. Intonation and stress make the difference between sounding like a language learner and sounding like a fluent speaker. And once you've got this down, you'll feel more comfortable in conversations, because you'll know exactly how to make your words land the right way. Let me ask you something. When you hear someone speaking fluently, do they sound like they're racing through their words? Fluent speakers don't rush. They know how to control the pace of the conversation. But most learners think that to sound fluent, they need to speak quickly without any gaps, and that's completely wrong. In fact, speaking too quickly makes you sound nervous and insecure. Have you ever watched a public speaker or a news anchor? They don't rush, they pause. Pausing is what makes someone sound thoughtful and confident. And the funny thing is, when you pause strategically, people actually listen more carefully to what you're saying. The problem is that when you're learning a language, silence feels uncomfortable. You feel like if you pause, the person you're talking to will think you don't know what you're saying. But that's not true. Pausing shows that you're in control. It creates a sense of authority and confidence. Fluent speakers use pauses to organize their thoughts, emphasize important points, and give their listener time to process what's being said. When you learn to pause strategically, You'll stop feeling like you need to fill every silence, and that's when you'll start sounding fluent.
Exactly. And here's the truth. When you rush, you actually make it harder for the listener to follow you. If you're speaking quickly and jumbling your words together, the other person will struggle to process what you're saying. That's why slowing down and adding intentional pauses instantly makes you sound more clear and confident. Let me give you some practical examples of how you can use pauses to sound more natural. Well, that's an interesting point. Starting with well and pausing gives you time to think, and it signals that you're considering what's being said. Let me think about that. Adding at the start shows that you're not rushing to answer. You're taking your time. Actually, I'm not sure. The pause after actually adds weight to your statement. It makes you sound calm and honest. Notice how all of these examples create a sense of control. That's the power of pausing.
And here's the crazy part. Native speakers do this all the time without even realizing it. Think about how people speak naturally. So, yeah, I guess we could meet tomorrow. Or, I think it's around the corner. Those small pauses are natural thinking gaps, and they make conversations sound relaxed and human. If you try to speak without pausing, you'll sound like you're reading from a script, and that's why so many learners sound stiff when they speak. But here's the trick. Not all pauses are created equal. There's a difference between a confident pause and an awkward pause. A confident pause feels intentional. You stop speaking, hold eye contact, and then continue smoothly. An awkward pause happens when you stop because you're lost or unsure. That's why you need to learn how to pause strategically, so you sound calm and controlled even when you're thinking.
That's a really important distinction. So how do you practice this? First, start by using filler phrases to introduce the pause naturally. Here are some examples. Let me see. That's a good question. Well, it depends. Actually, now that I think about it. These phrases act as a soft landing while you think about what to say next. They make your pause feel natural instead of awkward. If you can master these filler phrases, you'll never feel the need to rush through your sentences again.
And here's another technique that works really well, the power pause. When you're about to say something important, stop for just a second before you say it. That moment of silence builds anticipation and makes your words land with more impact. Let me give you an example. The reason this strategy works so well is pause. It forces your brain to think in English. See how that pause builds tension? You're giving your listener's brain time to prepare for the next piece of information, and that makes them listen more closely.
That's such a great technique. And you know who's really good at this? Public speakers and comedians. Comedians know that timing is everything. They pause before delivering a punchline because the silence builds tension. It's the same in regular conversation. If you pause before making a point, the person you're talking to will naturally lean in and pay closer attention.
That's exactly why pausing is such a confidence booster. If you're speaking too fast, it's easy to get tangled up in your own words and lose control of the conversation. But if you're pausing intentionally, you're showing that you're comfortable with silence, and that's powerful. Here's a drill you can try. Record yourself answering a question like, "What do you do for work?" or "How was your weekend?" First, say your answer without any pauses. Then record it again. But this time, insert a pause after every key point. You'll immediately notice that the second version sounds more natural and more confident.
And remember, you don't need to fill every silence. A well-placed pause makes you sound thoughtful and mature. It also helps you avoid the common mistake of using too many fillers like and Instead of filling the gap with noise, fill it with a pause. If someone asks, "What's your opinion on this?" take a second to breathe and organize your thoughts before you respond. Pausing makes you sound like you're considering your response, instead of scrambling for the right words.
That's why this technique is so powerful. It gives you control of the conversation. When you speak too quickly, the conversation controls you. But when you pause, you control the pace. You decide when to speak and when to hold back. And that makes you sound more confident and more fluent.
And here's a pro tip. Combine this with connected speech from the last chapter. For example, instead of saying, I'm going to the store quickly, say, I'm going to go to the store. Pause. Do you want to come with me? The combination of natural linking and a strategic pause makes your speech sound relaxed and natural, exactly how native speakers talk.
So here's your challenge. Over the next week, practice using pauses intentionally in your conversations. Start small. Insert a pause after the first sentence you say. Then try using a pause before making a key point. Finally, practice using filler phrases to give yourself more thinking time. If you do this consistently, you'll start noticing that you feel more relaxed and in control when you speak.
And the best part? You'll sound more fluent, even if you're still making small mistakes. Why? Because confidence isn't about saying every word perfectly. It's about delivering your message smoothly and naturally. And mastering the art of pausing gives you that confidence.
That's why this secret is such a game changer. And the next one is just as powerful. Because once you know how to control the pace of the conversation, the next step is knowing how to take charge when things go off track. And that's exactly what we're going to teach you next. Don't miss it.
Have you ever had a conversation that just felt awkward? You're talking to someone, you're making eye contact, but the conversation feels flat, like there's no flow. It's not that the other person is being rude, it's that you're missing a key ingredient that makes conversations feel natural. That ingredient is back-channeling, and it's one of the biggest secrets fluent speakers use to keep conversations flowing effortlessly. Back-channeling is when you give small verbal cues to show you're listening. Things like, I see, or right. Native speakers do this constantly without even thinking about it. But most English learners don't, and that's why their conversations feel awkward or disconnected. Think about the last time you spoke with a native speaker. Did they nod their head while you were talking? Did they say things like, yeah, or oh, really, while you were speaking? That's back-channeling. And it's not just polite, it's essential. When you don't back-channel, the other person feels like they're talking to a wall. Even if you're paying attention, they can't tell. And that makes the conversation feel unnatural. But when you start using back-channeling naturally, you create a sense of connection. The person you're talking to feels heard, and that's when conversations start to flow.
Exactly. Let me give you a real example. Imagine you're telling a story about your weekend to a friend. If they just sit there in silence staring at you, it feels weird, right? But if they say, oh, really? Wow, that's interesting. Suddenly it feels like they're engaged and interested. That's why fluent speakers don't just listen, they show they're listening. And the beauty of back-channeling is that it's so easy to do. You don't need to come up with complicated responses. You just need to give small signals that show you're paying attention. Here are some common back-channeling examples you can start using today. Simple and natural. Yeah, I see. Acknowledges that you understand. Right. Shows that you're following along. Interesting. Encourages the other person to keep talking. Got it. Confirms that you understand what they're saying. That makes sense. Reassures them that you're engaged. These are the same phrases native speakers use all the time, and once you start using them, your conversations will feel more connected and natural.
And let me be clear, back-channeling isn't just about making noise while the other person talks. It's about sending the right signals at the right time. If someone is telling you about a difficult experience, you wouldn't say cool or awesome. That would sound cold or insensitive. Instead, you'd say something like, oh, I see, or that sounds tough. Back-channeling helps you mirror the emotional tone of the conversation, which creates a deeper connection with the person you're talking to.
And here's the part that most learners miss. Back-channeling isn't just about words, it's also about nonverbal cues. Native speakers don't just say, they nod their head, they smile, they maintain eye contact. If you're sitting with your arms crossed and your face blank, even saying right won't help much. But if you nod your head and lean in slightly while saying, "Yeah, I get that," you create a sense of warmth and connection. That's why fluent speakers seem relaxed and natural. They're using both verbal and non-verbal back-channeling.
Let me give you a real-life example. I had a student named Carlos from Spain who spoke English really well, but his conversations felt stiff. He told me that even when people responded to him, the conversation would often just stop after a few minutes. The problem? He wasn't back-channeling. He would sit there listening silently, waiting for his turn to speak. Once I taught him how to use simple back-channeling phrases, things like, "uh-huh," "yeah, totally," and "I see." His conversations started to last longer. Why? Because people felt like he was engaged. Suddenly, people were opening up to him more because he was giving them the emotional feedback that makes conversations feel natural.
And here's why this works. Back-channeling makes the other person feel comfortable. When you back-channel correctly, you're essentially saying, "I'm listening to you, and I care about what you're saying." That builds trust, and that's when people start opening up and speaking more freely. But if you sit there silently, even if you're listening carefully, the other person feels disconnected, like they're talking to themselves.
And here's the best part. Back-channeling makes your job easier too. When you back-channel, you don't have to carry the conversation yourself. You're encouraging the other person to keep talking. Let me give you an example. Person A: "I had the most stressful day at work today." Person B: "Oh, really? What happened?" Person A: "My boss gave me a huge project at the last minute." Person B: "That sounds frustrating. See how that works?" Person B isn't saying much, but they're guiding the conversation and encouraging Person A to keep talking. That's what fluent speakers do. They use back-channeling to create flow without having to dominate the conversation.
That's exactly it. And the trick is to make it sound natural. If you sit there nodding too much and saying "uh-huh" after every word, you'll sound like a robot. But if you relax, make eye contact, and let your reactions match the mood of the conversation, you'll sound completely natural. Here's a quick drill you can try. Watch an interview or a podcast in English, something with a natural back-and-forth conversation. Listen carefully to how the interviewer back-channels. Notice when they say "uh-huh," when they laugh, when they nod. Then try to mimic that pattern the next time you're in a conversation.
And here's another tip. When you're practicing back-channeling, don't overthink it. If you're really listening to the other person, the right response will come naturally. If someone tells you about a funny experience, it's natural to smile and say, "That's hilarious." If someone tells you about a difficult day, it's natural to say, "Wow, that sounds tough." Just let yourself respond the way you would in your native language, but in English.
That's such a great point. Back-channeling isn't about memorizing phrases, it's about responding naturally and showing that you're emotionally engaged. When you get this right, conversations stop feeling like work. They start to feel easy. People will start opening up to you more, and you'll stop worrying about what to say next, because the conversation will flow naturally. All right, English learners, let me ask you something. Have you ever listened to someone speak and felt like you were zoning out, even though they were speaking clearly? It's not because the person was saying the wrong things, it's because they weren't using emphasis. Fluent speakers don't just say the right words, they know how to highlight the important parts of a sentence to create interest and emotion. If you speak in a flat, monotone voice, people will tune you out, even if your grammar is perfect. But if you know how to emphasize the right words, you instantly sound more confident and engaging. And here's the good news. Emphasis is one of the easiest things to fix. And once you get it right, your speaking will improve almost overnight. Here's the problem. Most learners focus on getting the words right, but they don't think about how they deliver them. And that's why, even though you might be saying the correct sentences, they don't land the right way. Emphasis is all about which word you choose to highlight. And in English, that changes the whole meaning of a sentence. Think about this example. I didn't say you took it. Emphasis on I means someone else said it. I didn't say you took it. Emphasis on say means it wasn't spoken out loud. I didn't say you took it. Emphasis on you means someone else might have taken it. Same sentence, 3 different meanings, all because of which word you stress. That's why emphasis is so powerful. It lets you control not just what you say, but how it's understood.
Exactly, and this is something that native speakers do naturally without even thinking about it. But as a learner, you need to train yourself to emphasize the right words, because that's what makes your speech sound dynamic and engaging. Let me give you some more examples. I really like the movie. Emphasis on really makes it sound like you had a strong emotional reaction. I really liked the movie. Emphasis on liked focuses attention on the action, the fact that you liked it. I really liked the movie. Emphasis on movie clarifies what you're talking about. Maybe you're comparing it to a book or a play. This is how fluent speakers make their speech sound expressive, by shifting the focus with emphasis. If you don't stress the right words, your sentences will sound flat, and people won't know what part of the sentence matters most.
And here's why this matters. English is a stress-timed language. That means some words are naturally more important than others. In most sentences, the content words, like nouns, verbs, and adjectives, get stressed. The function words, like and, of, and to, are usually reduced. For example, I'm going to the store. Going and store are stressed because they carry the meaning. I'm thinking about it. Thinking is stressed because it's the action. But if you try to stress every word equally, like I'm going to the store, it sounds unnatural. That's why emphasis is so important. It helps the listener focus on the right part of the sentence.
Let me give you a real-life example. I had a student named Anna from Germany. Her grammar was perfect, her pronunciation was clear, but her speaking still sounded robotic. The problem? She was stressing every word equally. So if she said, I'm going to the store, it sounded flat and unnatural. Once we focused on stressing the key words, I'm going to the store, her speech instantly sounded more natural. Why? Because native speakers naturally give rhythm to their sentences by stressing the important words and reducing the less important ones.
That's such an important point. And here's how you can practice it. Take a simple sentence like, I'm going to the store. First, say it with no stress at all. Just say the words in a flat tone. Then try stressing different parts of the sentence. I'm going to the store. Makes it about who's going. I'm going to the store. Focuses on the action of going. I'm going to the store. Focuses on the destination. Now think about how that applies in conversation. If someone says, do you want to go to the store or stay home? You'd probably say, I'm going to the store, because the important information is the fact that you're going and where you're going. But if someone says, who's going to the store? You'd probably say, I'm going to the store, because the focus is on who's going. See how that works? The emphasis shifts depending on the context.
Exactly. And this isn't just about speaking. It also helps with listening. Once you start paying attention to which words are stressed, you'll understand native speakers better, because you'll start noticing which part of the sentence matters most. For example, if someone says, I didn't say you took it, the stress on you tells you that the focus is on who took it, not the fact that it happened. That's why emphasis is a two-way street. It improves both your speaking and your listening.
And let's talk about tone, because emphasis isn't just about volume, it's about how you deliver the word. For example, if you say, I really like the movie, with a rising tone at the end, it sounds like you're excited. But if you say, I really like the movie, with a flat tone, it sounds like you're being polite but not enthusiastic. The way you emphasize a word, whether you make your voice rise or fall, changes the emotional tone of the sentence. That's why native speakers sound expressive. They're using tone and stress together.
That's such a good point. And you can practice this by recording yourself. Pick a short phrase like, I didn't say you took it, and record it 3 different ways, changing the emphasis each time. Then listen back and ask yourself, which version sounds the most natural? Which version sounds more confident? The more you practice shifting emphasis, the easier it will be to control the emotional tone of your speech.
And here's a quick hack. When you want to sound confident, slow down and add a slight pause before the word you want to emphasize. For example, I think that's a great idea. I know it's going to work. That's exactly what I was trying to say. The pause gives extra weight to the stressed word, and that makes you sound more in control.
That's so true. And it also gives you time to think. If you're feeling nervous, slowing down and emphasizing the right word helps you avoid rushing and stumbling over your words.
Let me ask you something. When you're talking to someone, do you remember every detail they say? Probably not. But if they tell you a story, even a simple one, you'll probably remember it. That's because the human brain is wired to remember stories, not facts. If you want to sound more interesting, more engaging, and more fluent when you speak English, you need to learn how to tell short, impactful stories. And here's the thing. Storytelling isn't just for entertaining people. It's one of the fastest ways to build connection and make conversations feel natural. When you tell a story, you're not just sharing information, you're giving the other person an experience. And that's why fluent speakers tell stories all the time, even in casual conversations. But here's the problem. Most English learners are scared of telling stories because they think they need to get every word perfect. That's not true. A good story isn't about perfect grammar, it's about structure and delivery. If you know how to organize a simple story, it will sound natural, even if you make small mistakes. That's why today we're going to teach you a simple, 3-step framework that will help you tell short, engaging stories effortlessly, even if you're not confident in your speaking yet.
Exactly. Fluent speakers aren't walking around with a script. They just know how to structure a story naturally. And once you know the structure, it becomes automatic. So here's the framework. 1. Set up. Give the background. Who, where, and when. Second action. What happened? Keep it simple and clear. 3. Punchline. What was the result or the funny, interesting part? Let me give you an example. Set up. Last week I had the funniest experience. Action. I was at the store when suddenly I realized I didn't have my wallet. Punchline. Turns out I had left it in the fridge. See how short and simple that is? You don't need to tell a long, complicated story. You just need to hit those 3 beats. And the best part is, people remember stories. If you tell someone a fact, they might forget it in 5 minutes. But if you tell them a funny story, they'll remember it for days.
And here's why this works. Stories trigger an emotional response. If you tell someone, I left my wallet at home, that's just information. But if you tell it as a story, I was standing at the cash register, I reached for my wallet, and suddenly I realized, oh no, it's in the fridge. You create suspense and emotion. People lean in when you tell a story. They want to know how it ends. That's why even simple stories make you sound more fluent, because they make people want to listen to you. And it's not just about entertainment. Stories are a powerful way to handle common conversations. If someone asks, how was your weekend? Instead of just saying, good, you could tell a quick story. It was great. Actually, something funny happened. I was walking my dog and suddenly, that's so much more engaging than just saying, good. The person you're talking to will be more interested, and they'll probably ask follow-up questions.
Exactly. And here's the key. You don't need to be funny or creative to tell a good story. You just need to make it personal and relatable. If you tell a story about how you forgot your wallet, the other person might say, oh, that's happened to me too. That's how you create connection. People connect through shared experiences, and stories are the fastest way to find that common ground. And let me tell you about a student I worked with, Maria from Brazil. She was super confident when it came to grammar and vocabulary, but she told me that conversations with native speakers felt awkward. The problem? She wasn't giving the conversation anything to build on. Her answers were too short. So we practiced storytelling. Instead of saying, my weekend was good, I told her to add a short story. The next time someone asked how her weekend was, she said, "It was great. Actually, something funny happened. I went to the beach, but I forgot my sunscreen. I looked like a tomato by the end of the day." The other person laughed and asked follow-up questions. That one small story turned a boring conversation into a fun, natural exchange.
That's such a great example. And here's why it works. Stories give the other person something to respond to. If you just give one-word answers, the conversation dies. But if you tell a short story, you give the other person a reason to keep the conversation going. Let me give you another example. Imagine someone asks you, "How's work going?" If you say, "Busy," that's a conversation killer. But if you say, "It's been crazy," actually, something funny happened yesterday. My coworker spilled coffee all over their laptop during a Zoom meeting. Now you've given them something to respond to. They might laugh, ask for more details, or share their own story, and that's how real conversations flow.
That's such a powerful trick. And let me add something else. Your story doesn't need to be perfect. It's actually better if it's a little messy, because that makes it feel more real. If you stumble over a word or need to rephrase something, that's totally fine. People don't expect you to tell a story like a professional speaker. They just want to connect with you. And here's the secret. Native speakers make mistakes when they tell stories all the time. They repeat themselves, they change details, they start and stop. That's normal. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about sounding natural.
That's why you need to stop worrying about getting every detail right and focus on making the story interesting. And the easiest way to do that is by adding a little suspense. Try this. Next time you tell a story, pause right before the punchline. For example, "So I was standing in line at the airport, and I heard my name over the loudspeaker. I turned around and it was my old friend from high school." That pause builds anticipation, and it makes the punchline hit harder.
Yes. And here's another trick. Use body language when you tell a story. If you say, "I couldn't believe it," and you raise your hands or shake your head, it makes the story feel more alive. Smile when you're telling a funny story. Lower your voice if you're telling something dramatic. The more emotion you put into the story, the more the other person will feel engaged.
That's such a good point, and that's why storytelling is such a game changer for fluency. It's not about language ability, it's about how you make the other person feel. If you tell a good story, the person you're talking to will feel connected to you, and that's what makes conversations feel easy.
So here's your challenge. Over the next week, practice telling 3 short stories in English. They don't need to be dramatic, just real-life moments. Maybe something funny that happened at work, or an awkward situation you had at the store. Use the 3-step framework. 1. Set up. Who, where, when. Second action. What happened? 3. Punchline. What was the result? Record yourself telling the story. Then try telling it to a friend or language partner. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. And soon you'll find yourself slipping stories into conversations without even thinking about it.
And that's why this works, because when you tell stories, you sound more fluent, more interesting, and more confident, even if your grammar isn't perfect. And once you've mastered storytelling, the next step is knowing how to keep the conversation going naturally. And that's exactly what we're going to cover next. Don't miss it. This next secret will make you sound like a fluent speaker in any situation. You've made it. You've just learned some key secrets to improving your English speaking, and that puts you ahead of most learners. Now it's time to take action. Don't wait until you feel ready. You're ready now. Start speaking, make mistakes, and keep pushing yourself. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about confidence under pressure.
Exactly. You already have the tools. Now you just need to use them. Join conversations, handle interruptions, mirror the speaker's tone, and don't be afraid to mess up. Every mistake is a step toward fluency. Keep showing up, keep speaking, and trust the process.
And remember, fluency isn't a destination, it's a habit. Speak every day, stay consistent, and you'll see progress faster than you think. You've got this. Now go out there and start speaking with confidence.
You've got this, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.